The new counter-terrorism and security bill has given the government unprecedented powers to stop Brits who join terrorist groups abroad from returning to the UK. But it also places new impetus on some of our most sacred institutions to monitor extremism at home.
The government has enshrined into law new legislation that will demand universities prevent students from being exposed to violent and non-violent extremism. Critics say that this will put universities at loggerheads with its obligation to promote freedom of expression and its new duties to prevent terrorism.
This is Essex University. Students here have joined forces with others around the country to campaign against what they feel is an infringement on academic freedom. These students tell me that the new law has been pushed through Parliament so quickly that they had little time to oppose it.
I think that universities are in a really unique position in that we are a place of academia and we can challenge some of these views. I think education is the greatest tool against intolerance and hate. And if those views can't be expressed and discussed, then I think it really has a real detrimental effect to countering terrorism as a whole.
As an international student, I think that if I come here to a foreign country and someone tells me that I cannot talk about a specific topic, that it's not well defined by the bill, how can I know what can I say and what can I not say? And how can I trust that my professor or my lecturer is not going to report me?
How do you think the government should be addressing the issue of, for example, extremism or radicalisation on campus?
Well, what is extremism
Do we have an
to
issue?
begin with?
The draft Prevent guidelines define extremism as vocal or active opposition to fundamental British values. They also state that universities must carry out a risk assessment on where and how extremism may take place. They must also take seriously their responsibility to exclude those promoting extremist views, giving at least 14 days notice for an event or a guest speaker appearance, and must provide advance notice of the contents of the event. Many students come to the UK from countries that don't respect freedom of speech and human rights, leaving some feeling these guidelines could make Britain a less appealing prospect.
A lot of us, especially from the Muslim side, and those who are like international students like us, I've heard things like they could just kind of identify you as terrorists without any basis or evidence. So it makes us more scared being in the UK.
Do you think it will affect freedom of speech?
It would most certainly affect freedom of speech. It means that a lot of people won't be able to profess their religion. That's a freedom of speech in itself, an article in which the Human Rights Act gives us. So it's going against all of our freedoms.
But supporters of the Prevent strategy say that once the guidelines are properly explained, it will ease fears surrounding its implementation.
We've seen student groups claiming that it will criminalise every aspect of Muslim life on campuses, that it's all about spying on students. And I think that one reason perhaps why students oppose it so much is that it's not quite clear to them exactly what the provisions of the bill will be or how it will work on campuses.
But it is not just students who are worried. Vice-chancellors, hundreds of professors and members of the House of Lords have also voiced their concerns, including a surprising intervention by the former head of MI5.
My instincts are very often in support of the government on these sort of subjects, knowing how countering terrorism is not straightforward. But the doubts which I expressed at second reading about putting Prevent, whatever its importance, on a statutory footing, in particular with regard to universities, have, I'm afraid, not been assuaged by anything I've heard today.
But the Prevent strategy is not set in stone. Revised guidelines are due to be published in the coming weeks, which will be put to a separate vote in Parliament. And while the university sector acknowledges it needs to tackle extremism, those who are on the front line say that some of the current measures are not practical.
The draft guidance requires universities to see what it is that external speakers are going to say 14 days in advance. That's an example of something which is quite frankly unworkable, and it doesn't help us in taking forward counter-terrorism activities. It's impractical, and we hope that it's something that will not figure in the final version of the guidance.
Formalising the Prevent strategy into university campuses has raised questions about just how much we are willing to give up in the fight against terrorism. Is sacrificing some free speech the best way? And in doing so, are we losing the opportunity to openly educate people away from the lure of extremism?